Gathering Games here with my counterpart. This is Rachel. We're going to go. Yeah, sorry. We're going to go over a little bit of discussing what an RPG is. So it's an acronym for role-playing game, and get into the basics. So for those of you that have been wary or fearful of getting into a role-playing game, kind of reduce that barrier so you guys are more open to the idea of looking at getting into one of the most classic games, board games that we have available to us here. So we're going to start off with a little bit discussing what is an RPG, the basics of it. We're just going to run us through that, and then we'll go into a little more detail as we go into things you'll need and some other related game systems. So if you would, Rachel.
Sure. So basically an RPG is a storytelling game where you're telling a cooperative story where one person acts as the game master. They set the landscape, they set some generic rules about their world that they're running, and they intermediate between any disputes. And they determine whether or not actions of players are successful or failures. And then players are improvising, they're role-playing their characters that they've created, and as part of that they're maybe fighting monsters or trying to sell items or trying to convince someone of something. And all of those actions are decided typically by dice in most role-playing games. So one of the most common role-playing games that we have is Dungeons and Dragons. This is my copy of the Dungeon Master's Manual. This is 5th edition. And you can use this manual to create and run a Dungeons and Dragons game. In addition to this, you'll also need the player's handbook, but for anyone who's playing, and possibly the monster manual if you want a bunch of different types of monsters. But you really don't even need these items to get started. And as Steve and I will talk about later, there's a lot of free resources available for role-playing games. So another popular role-playing game that we have here at the Gathering Games is Pathfinder. There are several Pathfinder groups that meet here. Pathfinder is similar to Dungeons and Dragons. There's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Minutia.
Yeah, minutia.
Yes.
You're able to very clearly define exactly how you want your character to be, where Dungeons and Dragons tends to be a little bit more narrative driven. Another system that is available that's a fairly common system is Fate Core. With this one, you sort of are developing your character as you go along. So you're determining attributes that your characters have that affect their actions throughout the telling of the story, which is pretty interesting. One we have for fans of My Little Pony is Tales of Equestria. We have several adult and children's groups that play this game at the store, and it's actually a blast. I sat and watched a group play one day, and it's super fun. So those are some of the games that we have here at the store.
Yeah, to go with all that stuff, there's some other tools that are necessary and are optional that can really broaden what you're going to get out of your role-playing experience. So first and foremost, whether you're playing really in-depth or you're just going really simple, you're going to need dice. Most people are familiar with the 6-sided die. You play Yahtzee or any of the Monopoly traditional games, you have a 6-sided die. So that's the basic probability dice. You run into d6s all over the place. When you get into role-playing, you're going to need a lot of different sided dice, just because of different probabilities that are required to kind of demonstrate either the power arc of certain items, or just to increase a greater sense of randomness. So you actually have a 4-sided die. It's really weird. It's a little pyramid, has 4 sides to it. Again, the 6-sided die is an 8-sided die, 10-sided, 12-sided, and the D20, the classic D20 that is critical for everybody. So if you get nothing else, definitely get a D20. You will need that no matter what. For most of these systems, there are some systems that actually will only use a 6-sided die. That's a pretty common system. There's actually systems that use weird dice, 7-sided die. I've seen 15-sided die. Literally, if you could think of a number of face, I've seen a giant 100-sided die. So there's all sorts of things. So what this does is it drives the probability, because in life nothing is guaranteed. You are really good at something, you're well trained, but there's still that sense of you could fail at this, or it could be not as impactful as you had hoped for. So that's why the dice are important. They create that randomness element that's inherent in all of our lives. If you go further down the rabbit hole, there's a lot more stuff to introduce into your games. These are painted miniatures. They come unpainted. We have them available in the store. You can also get them online. But this allows you to, again, spend more time on the hobby side of role-playing. These are not necessary, totally optional, but they are really good to get into really learning more about the hobby side. They're super simple to paint. I painted all these. I'm not a master class painter whatsoever, but they look nice and they add some color to your playing table. Some other resources that are available, we have flip mats. So these are big mats that you can fold out and they'll lay out like a dungeon, or like this one's an asylum. So you're in a building, you want some more structure to it, and maybe you don't want to try to visualize, you want people to really see what you're trying to get after. This provides a great opportunity to do that. And we also have these roll up hex grid and square grid mats. So again, it'll lay out things so it's more precise. So if people can only move so far, you can really demonstrate their movement potential and where they are in relation to that certain environment or that setting that you're currently in. The great thing about these is that they're all optional except for the dice. But even then, you don't even have to purchase dice. There are apps online that you say, I need to roll 4d4. Hit the button and it'll roll it out. Because it's all probability, it's random. So computers are great at random and probability. So there's online resources for all this. So if you're not able to get a group of people together, you don't have any dice, but you'd really like to get into it, you don't have to spend a red cent really to get into it. I mean, you can get people together over virtual means, Skype, even Zoom, all those meeting programs. There's all sorts of ways to get together with people, especially in the current climate we're in. We want to socialize, and we have the technology to still do games like this without leaving the safety and the comforts of our home. So some great resources, and we'll provide a lot of links for a lot of this stuff. You can get you can get rolling on almost all these without spending one penny. Mm-hmm. And then one great thing that you'll always want to need, something to write on and something to write with. That's one of the biggest lessons I think a lot of people learn when they get into RPGs is take notes. I mean, it's just like you're sitting in class. It's the same thing. There are so many things that go on, so many important things in those little sessions that we get that you are only playing once a month or once every 2 weeks that you're going to forget things and you're not going to recall everything that happened. So I highly suggest having something readily available to take notes.
And even as a dungeon master, I'll say, if you make something up on the fly, make sure to write it down, because one of your characters will bring it up the next session. So that's important too.
And the last thing we're going to discuss is, again, if you're not interested in role-playing games, but you like telling stories and you like having fun with it and creating some random elements to it, Rachel's going to go over a few games that we have, but you can also, again, find anywhere else online to do that. So
this is a very simple game. These are story cubes. And basically what you do is you roll these cubes. I'm not going to roll them really loud because they're on a wooden surface here. But you use these pictures to tell a story. And my nieces and nephews love this game, but it's also great for improv, for trying to think on the fly. And there are several different games using this dice that are available in the instruction sheet. One is you have a hero and you tell the beginning and middle and end of their story using 3 dice each. So those are story cubes, and there are very different variants of the story cubes. There's one that's sports related, there's one that's fantasy, etc., etc. Another great game for storytelling purposes is Once Upon a Time. And these are some really nicely decorated cards that use standard fairy tale tropes. And basically everybody is given an ending to their story. And what you're trying to do is drive the story elements to your ending. And you do that by using interrupt cards or taking over a story if somebody mentions an element of your story. Wing It is similar.
Alright, so hopefully we broke down the barriers a little bit of what role-playing games are, gave you some options, something to think about in the current climate we're at. If you have any questions, hit us up on Facebook, Facebook Messenger, call us. We have a voicemail system, so if you have any issues, just leave a message, we'll reach out to you. You can also email us, frontdesk@thegatheringgames.com. We'll give all of our contact information with additional links. So thanks for tuning in, and be safe.